What's up, guys? My name is Zach, and today I am driving a 1995 Oldsmobile Silhouette. Up front is a 3.8 liter V6, and down below is a 4-speed automatic transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this here Silhouette for many reasons, but mainly the fact that this is just a cool minivan. It is the Dustbuster. This car is iconic, and this one looks great, is a very clean example. I'm excited to dig into it with you guys today. But before we get on to anything else, I have a website, zackpradel.com, where you can buy stickers and other merchandise when it becomes available. You could also submit your own vehicles to be reviewed by me through a quick and easy submission form, and you get a video of your car just like this one. And you could read my behind-the-scenes blog to see what I'm filming before it comes out on the channel. But let's get back to that 3.8 liter V6. Well, it's a 3800 series from GM, and if you're familiar with GMs, you know this engine. It's a very reliable, very stout engine. It was actually the first engine I actually ever tore down, so I know what the insides look like. I know what the guts look like. And does it put down crazy numbers at the crank? No, but it works, and it works really well. There was another engine offered here in the Oldsmobile Silhouette, and that was a 3100 series 3.1 liter V6 that you would also find in like the Buick Century that I filmed and other vehicles like that. And it's not a bad engine per se, it's just really underpowered when it came to the Silhouette. I mean, you have to remember, this is a big, heavy minivan. So the 3100 doesn't quite cut the mustard. The 3800, that's what you want. Like I said, paired to it is the 4-speed automatic. It's shifting well, it's doing its job, and it's being quiet. So for a 90s car, that's all I can ask for. Last but not least, this here Silhouette is front-wheel drive. But with that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have a bunch of gauges. Off to left is my volts and oil pressure. Then I have my tachometer and speedometer. And on the right, I have my fuel and temperature. I love the colors of these. I think they look very, very 90s, this sort of light blue and red and yellow, and color combos we don't really see much of anymore. But off to the left of the gauge cluster, attached to it, I have my different light settings, which is really, really cool. And the toggle switches off to the left actually work in unison. So when you turn the headlights on, the parking lights come on automatically. But you can also turn on the parking lights independent of the headlights, which I think is a cool little button gimmick. Off to the right, still attached to the gauge cluster, we have the wiper settings and rear wiper as well as mist, which are fantastic. This is a very 90s and 80s thing to do, to have buttons that attach to the gauge cluster. The steering wheel doesn't have anything on it besides the Oldsmobile logo and of course the horn. And moving off to the left, I have a climate control vent, and on the door, I have my lock and unlock and power windows. However, while we're on the topic of the door, it has this really funny sticker on the inside of the door. I guess too many people were bonking themselves on the door that not only did they feel a need to put a sticker on it to warn people not to do it, but they also have this hilarious illustration just hitting their head right on the door. I find that hilarious, and I haven't seen that in another car. However, we will talk about the door again in a second. Now, I do want to talk about the above head center console really quick too. We do have temperature and compass and things like that. It looks exactly like the second-gen Dodge Ram temperature and compass, interestingly enough. But then I do have this little openable cubby. The interesting thing about that is that it is for your garage door opener, but you don't program it to the car. You just duct tape your garage door opener behind it, and then you use this nice flush button, this nice pretty presentable one, to then hit your garage door opener. All it does, it just works as an extension of your finger. Kind of weird. But then I also have a sunglasses holder and a CD holder as well, so plenty of above head storage. Moving into the center, up at the very top, I actually get storage, which is pretty fun. There are plenty of storage options here in the Silhouette, this being one of them, kind of quirky. Then I get 3 climate control vents down below, and then we have the climate controls off to the left, so I do get rear defrost and AC and, you know, different settings like that. But I really like how neat and simple these buttons are. Off to the right, I do have the radio. Now what's interesting is that this did have the optional CD player, and I don't have a volume knob, I just have volume buttons. Kind of quirky there. Moving down below that, I do have my interior light switch, a 12-volt outlet, and my rear fan speed. So this does come with the optional rear climate controls we'll talk about when we talk about the back seats, and so you can control the fan speed down here. Then we do have cup holders, so we will do the big friggin' bottle test here in the Oldsmobile Silhouette. And unfortunately, not only are the cup holders a little bit too skinny, but they're recessed into the dash, so the bottle is also too tall. So unfortunately, as much as I love this little dustbuster, I have to give it a fail on the big friggin' bottle test. In between the cup holders, I do have a nice little coin holder, ashtray, whatever you want to use it for. And then I have more storage down below, really technically the third glove box of the motor vehicle, which is pretty unique. I don't give anything on the floor, which is really, really nice. Nothing OEM, at least. And it gives you nice leg room off to the right and makes it feel pretty spacious. Speaking of feeling, we'll talk about the seats. The seats are very, very comfortable. I've said this a million times, and I'll say it a million more. GM knew what they were doing when they were making comfy seats back in the 80s and 90s. I don't think I have driven a single car from this era from GM that I found to be uncomfortable. They really hit it out of the park time and time again, and I absolutely love that. But speaking of seats, we do have more seats in the back, so let's go do a back seat review. All right, so we're in the back of the 1995 Oldsmobile Silhouette, and a couple of things to note. Like I mentioned, this does have the optional rear climate controls, so I get 3 vents up here. This really reminds me of like the Toyota Previa and first-gen Honda Odyssey / Isuzu Oasis. So something cool there, very 90s minivan. But I also have rear fan speeds over there for the rear passengers and a little ashtray, so you can light up as well as control the fan speed, which is nice, I guess. And unfortunately, the rear seats, the third row, are not currently in it. But these seats are comfortable. Sitting back here as a grown adult man, I'm comfy. I'm not out of my place. It's not uncomfortable, and it's actually really nice. But since we don't have that third row of seats, we will hop around the back and we'll do a quick trunk and cargo space review. All right, so we're on the back of the Oldsmobile Silhouette, and something that older GM cars do you might not be aware of is that they actually have 2 different keys. The round key is for the trunk and doors, and the square key is for the ignition. So, little interesting fact there, but put it in here, pull up like that. Don't forget to get your keys back out. And once we are back here, of course it is a minivan, tons and tons of space. Now, these are for snapping in a third row of seats. Like I said, this one just doesn't have it. However, I do get some storage options over here. That's really nice. And I get the same thing over here. Again, really, really nice. More climate control vents back here as well. I don't get a 12-volt outlet. I normally like to see that in vehicles like this, but this is the 90s, and it was not common in the 90s, so I can't hate on it at all for that reason. But nothing really else to report back here. Tons and tons of space. I'm sure in the comments below you can leave a ton of stories of moving into college in one of these, or moving into your new apartment, or putting a mattress in the back with all your friends and going on a camping trip. I'm sure people have those stories because it's a minivan. It's what you used it for, and I love that. Now we got to talk about the looks, and this is obviously one of the most polarizing parts of the Oldsmobile Silhouette. It is nicknamed the Dustbuster because, as seen here, this is a dustbuster. Kind of looks like it. I also love this paint color. I think every 90s car should be in this paint color. I love it so much. It's so period, but also just fantastic, and really has held up really, really well. I also love the stripe that goes all the way around it. Some graphics package, and I love that about it. This car is very period correct, very well kept example, which I of course love to see. But now let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think finally driving an Oldsmobile Silhouette? Well, the driving experience is fine. It's not anything crazy. It does drive like a minivan, but as people I'm sure have said 1.5 million times, driving this feels, oh my God, there's another one! Holy sh**! How? Wow. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, people say that these feel like a spaceship. And I get that because it does have one of the largest front windows I've ever seen, and it did it correctly where the Fiat failed, and it has 2 extra windows on the sides to bridge the gap. It's a really interesting look and feel. But I think the spaceshipness goes beyond that. All these buttons and switches are right at my hand's reach. I have so many controls, and they're very clicky. They're very notchy. I have displays, I have my temperature up here, and I have lights that I can turn on. But also, look at the way, cut to the in-car editing, Zach. You see this right here? This sort of makes me feel like I'm in a capsule or something. Because almost every car that I drive, you don't see the end of the window in your peripheral vision. But here you do, so it sort of makes a, not claustrophobic feeling, but it is sort of this, I'm in a capsule, you know, I'm not the biggest, widest open thing in the world. That's kind of an interesting feeling. I really, really love this van just because of how rare they are nowadays. They're GM, so you know I have this sort of nostalgia with GM. I love how well preserved this van is. I just love how cool it is. And the owner, Spencer, which, thank you, Spencer, for letting me take your van out, says that this was his show car this year. This is what he brought to shows, and this is what gets the most attention. Because I think minivans like this really have a special place in our hearts because they were sort of the average Joes. You never bought a minivan off the showroom floor with the hopes of babying it and waxing it every Sunday. These vehicles were putting in the hard work day in and day out. And so none of them really got saved. They were all used. They used them up. So now, edging on 30 years later, they're a rarity. They're scarce. So when I was a kid, I never looked at these vans and thought, wow, I am gonna drive 4.5 hours one way just to film one. But here I am today, and I couldn't be happier. Huge thank you to my new friend, Spencer. He is absolutely awesome. We are gonna be filming a couple of his cars today. He is a collector, a curator, a savior of front-wheel drive GMs. He also runs the Facebook group for front-wheel drive GMs. I'll link that in the description below. Please, if you own one, please go check it out. Please join the Facebook group. I've been added to so many car clubs and Facebook groups over the years, and I have to say it's one of the most friendly environments I've been a part of. That's really all thank you to Spencer. Spencer does a fantastic job monitoring and moderating and all those things, so can't thank him enough. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.